I'm Mike Eastridge. I'm a lay member of Holston Annual Conference and a member at Muncie Memorial United Methodist Church in the Johnson City District. I also serve as the chair of the Holston Conference Strategy Team. And it's my excited pleasure to be able to share with you some of the things that we as a team have prayed about and discerned God's will for the way that we might be able to improve the way in which Holston Conference performs its work and moves into the future. I know that for many of you, you may be familiar with our team and you may have been keeping up with the progress that we've undertaken over the years. You may have participated in some of the feedback sessions or initiatives that we've conducted over the course of a year. Some of you may just recall that last year at Holston Annual Conference, we presented, in effect, a progress report for our efforts that we have been attempting over the past year. But I realize that for some of you, you may never have even heard about us and know nothing about the work that we're doing and the vision that we have gained for how we might move forward as a conference. So what I would like to do briefly is talk to you a little bit about the plan that we've prepared and we intend to share at the 2017 Holston Annual Conference at Lake Junaluska. Let me begin by introducing you to the members of the team. We initially gathered as a team in September of 2015. We have several lay members, in addition to myself, Leanna Johnson of the Johnson City District, Lori Sluter of the Knoxville District, and Becky Hall of the Chattanooga District. We also have pastors in the local church, Micah Nicholas of Lenoir City, and Don Hanshoe of Dublin, Virginia. 3 district superintendents are members of the team, Charles Maynard in Maryville, Sandra Johnson in the Abingdon District, and Jeff Wright in the Big Stone Gap District. We also have members of the conference executive team, Rick Cherry, who's our conference treasurer and administrative services. We also have Rusty Taylor, who is the director of congregational development and revitalization. We also have Mike Sluter, who is the director of connectional ministries for the conference, and Bishop Taylor. So as we have met over the course of the past year and a half, we have evolved in our thinking, and God has led us on a pilgrimage to determine what might be the best course of action for Holston Conference in the days ahead. So the notion of simply redistricting the conference never went away, but it's no longer a central part of the comprehensive plan. So I would encourage you to look at the strategy plan. You can see it on the website, or you might have it mailed to you, or if you have it in some manner along with the other conference materials that you might have received. And I would also encourage you to look at the entire document as a whole and begin at the beginning and don't just move straight to the actual proposal, because it's important that you understand the foundation and how we progressed from simply redistricting the conference to a point where we have a large comprehensive strategy for greater fruitfulness and effectiveness in Holston Conference. So the proposal that you may be looking at, that I want you to read fully, has 7 components to it. And each of those components play a part and are woven into the bigger comprehensive strategy. And this is what we'll be proposing at the annual conference at Lake Junaluska this summer in 2017. So here are the elements. The first element that we are looking at, and we put it first because of its importance, is something that we're calling reconnecting the connection. We realize that the most important thing above all else is that we as a conference are united, and that there's unity in the way that we perform our mission and ministry in Holston Conference. We are, at the end of the day, a body of Christ, and we all have different parts, and we all have different responsibilities, but this entire comprehensive conference strategy is designed to strengthen our connection so that we can move forward working together knowing that we work best when we work together. We also have some challenges coming up within the denomination, and it's important that we remain united because our mission has always been, is, and always will be making disciples for Christ for the transformation of the world. And this is what this comprehensive strategy is designed to do. So, two things about this strategy are a little bit unique. One is that unlike times when I was growing up in the church where the management of the growth of the church was the focus, you could do things like present a program from the top and have it go down to the local churches or to districts to implement. And that's the way we used to do things. We can't do that anymore, and things are a little bit different now. And so one of the unique things about this strategy is that it's neither top-down nor bottom-up, and it's more as if we're all on the same playing field, that we're all unified in our effort, and it's a matter of building the capacity of local churches, lay members, and clergy to fulfill their calling in a more effective and fruitful way. The second thing that this document is, it's a document of faith, and it's a matter of believing that God works to the people in the pew, to the pastor behind the lectern, behind the pulpit, to inspire and energize everyone into the mission field, that there are new and different ways that God inspires us to do mission and ministry in the church. And so what this comprehensive strategy does is work at that level. Again, there's no top down or bottom up anymore. It's all of us in unity working together to fulfill God's call within Holston Conference. And so strategically, you have more of the deployment of resources, deployment of personnel, and the activity of the conference working to unify the conference in a way that we're all working together in unity, because with a strength and connection, we can do more. The second element of this plan is finding ways to strengthen the connection through churches and through clergy. We've realized as a part of our feedback that we received in the course of conducting our study for the comprehensive strategy was that clergy need to be part of groups of accountability and sharing and support. And so one of the elements of this plan is to require all clergy to be a part of a support group of some type. And this is the sort of thing that they would report to the district superintendent to make sure that everyone is participating, not out of obligation, but as a means of strengthening their ministry. There's a challenge for clergy who are sometimes isolated, and this is one means by which we can strengthen clergy and provide assistance for clergy. This is complementary to the new 2016 General Conference new proposal that all clergy go through a period of examination and review of their ministry to take place every 8 years, and it's a 6-month process of evaluation. So we're combining both of those into this element. We also want to support churches and the way that churches work together in mission and ministry. One of the things that, one of the means by which this is done, especially if ultimately the number of districts change and the location and the boundaries change, is that each district have a missional hub. And within those hubs, churches are able to work together, combine their resources, combine their leadership, and find new ways to work together to advance the kingdom of God. Sandra Johnson will be talking with you a little bit about how she sees the role of this new emphasis on supporting clergy and local churches and how these missional hubs might work.
I am Sandra Johnson, serving as District Superintendent in the Abington District. Do no harm, do good, stay in love with the Lord. One of the aspects of the strategic proposal that affirms our general rules is the continued and enhanced support of clergy and churches. One method of support for clergy is the formation of small groups. Our clergy need the support of each other. It's too easy for pastors to be swaddled up by loneliness that drains their strength, their drive, and their vitality. They need a place where they can share and learn from each other, a place where they can give and receive the emotional and spiritual support, as well as the encouragement and accountability of one another. The small group affords such a place. Churches need that same support and encouragement. A missional hub structure can help contextually facilitate this much-needed support. Working together in missional hub settings is not an attempt to merge or close churches. It is an opportunity for churches to fellowship and serve together, share their strengths and their struggles, and work to reach the communities around them in transformative ways. Working together will allow us to do things we might not have been able to do on our own, to enrich our creativity, and share our resources as we seek to address the needs of our mission fields as we bear witness to the love and the power of Jesus Christ.
The third element in the comprehensive conference strategy is what we call right-sizing the districts. So there is a part of the proposal that requests that the annual conference act to reduce the number of districts in Holston Conference from 12 to 9. Here's how that works. The Book of Discipline, the rule book through which the United Methodist Church operates, separates the responsibilities of the location and the boundaries of the districts and district superintendents among three groups. First of all, under the discipline, the bishop has the right and the authority to appoint district superintendents. Now, many conferences throughout the denomination, sometimes the bishop will appoint one district superintendent to handle 2 or 3 districts. So the number of districts doesn't change, but you may have several reconfigurations of the areas in which a district superintendent might have authority. It's the bishop and the district superintendents who actually determine the boundaries of the districts and where those districts lie. And then the third element of this is the number of districts in the conference, and that is the responsibility under the authority of the annual conference. And so what the conference strategy team is proposing at this annual conference is that the conference adopt as a preliminary step to evaluating the location and size of the districts, the number of districts. And our preliminary assessment, looking at the data, reveals that at this point 9 appears to be the maximum optimum number of districts, which will allow us to consolidate our resources, consolidate our leadership, and then open the way for the district superintendents and the bishop to determine the actual boundaries and the location of what those districts are. The intent of all of that is to try to create some equitable distribution of all the resources and leadership throughout the conference. If you look at the current situation and compare it to when these districts were initially designed and created, there's been a huge change in the number of churches, the number of members in the churches, and so right-sizing those districts helps eliminate some of the disparity that now exists in Holston Conference, where lots of resources and leadership is concentrated in small areas. So we're trying to make it more equal across the conference. So that's one part of the proposal. Second part of that proposal, though, is if when we're asking for the conference to act on this proposal, is to approve an evaluation process to make that determination of where and the boundaries, the location and the boundaries of the districts. That's where everyone would have input into those issues. And so if you look at your conference strategy plan, you can see the elements that we propose looking at. One, of course, is the number of clergy that's supervised within a district. We're also looking at the actual geographic boundaries of it, the resources that are available within that district, again, trying to equalize the amount of resources in each area. And each area has its own unique mission field, and we want to make sure that we're taking that into account when we're looking at the location and the boundaries of those districts. So that's a process that is subsequent to the action of the annual conference, just simply approving the number of districts. And again, that will allow us to go through the remainder of that process of evaluation to determine exactly where those boundaries are. Charles Maynard will tell us a little bit more about that vision of how this fits in with the larger conference comprehensive strategy that we have, and how we feel like this is a way that we can more effectively do mission and ministry in Holston Conference.
Hi, I'm Charles Maynard. I'm the District Superintendent of the Maryville District, and I wanted to talk to you about one aspect of the conference strategy, and that is the way that we align ourselves in structures in districts. And as we looked at the district structures that we have now, they're the same structures that we've had for about 60 years. Holston, previous to that, had been very fluid, adaptable in the ways that we structured ourselves administratively, which is what districts are. And so as we've looked at this, we have tried to better adapt ourselves to the current population centers, to infrastructure. All of these things have changed in the last 60 years, and yet we have maintained the same administrative structures. So in order to best respond to these changes in our population centers and in all of these other aspects, we've looked at changing the number and sizes of the districts that we have so that we can best share resources within those districts among churches, but also share those resources within the conference as we don't fund as many districts and use some of those resources to do some other kinds of work, missional in nature. And so all of these things come together for us to reconsider this. Now, this may mean that in the future we need to reconsider that. In other words, we don't need to stay with what we're proposing right now for another 60 years. We need to always be adapting to current situations. If we find out in a few years that this isn't quite working, then we need to shift and do some other things.
The fourth element of our comprehensive conference strategy is revitalizing the boards and agencies and committees of Holston Conference. We have been conducting the business of Holston Conference for years, quite often just using the same committees and agencies. And so what we realized in reviewing this is that there's some overlap in some of these committees, and sometimes there's gaps where business of the church is not being done because there's not a committee. So what we're proposing is a full examination of all the agencies, committees, and boards of Holston Conference to make sure that we're most effectively using our leadership and that people are engaged and they're familiar with what their roles are on that committee and have a better concept of the role of that committee or agency within the larger life of Holston Conference. One of the elements of emphasis that the General Church has made is finding new and stronger leadership within the church. And so one of the elements of this proposal is to help locate and find new leadership and maybe reconsider the way that we conduct meetings, using more use of technology, looking at the times that we have meetings, as well as creating short-term projects where you might have skilled and experienced persons within Holston Conference who can't commit to a standing committee but might be able to work on a specific focal project. So this is kind of a new way that we might be doing business within the conference. Becky Hall will be telling you a little bit more about how we envision that this might work within the life of Holston Conference.
Most of you have heard the expression, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. You know, that quote was attributed to many notables, including Albert Einstein and Henry Ford. There's a lot of value in that statement. which applies to many aspects of our lives. We often just keep doing the same things as a comfortable routine when all the situations around us are changing. The strategy team is proposing to set up a task force to evaluate the purpose, effectiveness, and role of each conference committee, agency, board, and team to see if its work is accomplishing the Holston Conference missional objectives, which are based on the 4 areas of focus that were approved at the 2008 General Conference for the entire United Methodist denomination. Those areas of focus are developing principled Christian leaders for the church and the world, creating new places for new people, and renewing our existing congregations, engaging in ministry with the poor, stamping out the killer diseases of poverty by improving health globally. The task force will be making recommendations after the study. I have had the privilege over the years of serving on various committees, starting with being on the work area on evangelism as a young adult. The caliber of the laity and clergy that I have had the fortune of working with has been very inspiring, as I have seen positive results of their tireless work. So many have willingly given of their time to serve on the many boards, agencies, committees, and teams. For me, this is an excellent time to evaluate how we are currently operating and what are ways to improve our use of the talent, time, and efforts of our people. We should be asking ourselves constantly as we serve, does this fit into one of the 4 areas of focus? And is it important to the betterment of others? I've been so honored to be a member of the strategy team. We have logged many hours of work and research. The goal for all of us is to have well-defined, trained, and efficiently run committees, boards, and agencies, so that Holston can move forward in the work of the kingdom and have the biggest impact on lives here and around the world that is possible.
A 5th element of this comprehensive strategy team is looking at our resources and making sure that we are utilizing our resources in a strategically efficient way, that we are being good stewards of the resources that we have. So we've designed an evaluative process, doing a health check of churches and ministries within Holston Conference, and making sure that our resources are being used and being deployed most effectively in the right places. So there may be ministries within Holston Conference that may no longer be viable. It's a period of discernment to determine if maybe those resources should still be directed to those areas. And so, in that health check, we want to make sure that, if there is a ministry that really can no longer be supported by our resources, and if those resources were deployed to another area, which also had needs, but had the potential for more viability, more fruitful ministry, then we're diverting those resources, we're redeploying them so that they're more effectively used. Of course, we also recognize there are some ministries within Holston Conference that are not self-sustaining and yet are so important to our identity as a conference, to the role of our mission and ministry, that they deserve continuing support. So it's just a discernment process to make sure that our resources are being sent to the most appropriate places with the most potential for growth and viability. The 6th area of our strategy team is looking at the staffing of Holston Conference. If you'll recall, the emphasis on redeploying our energies, our resources toward local churches and districts. Part of the process that we are envisioning is that conference staff are deployed accordingly, that they're deployed in a way that we're making best use of those resources within a new vision. And that new vision is that we are building the capacity, supporting the unity of churches and local districts and local churches for the purpose of engaging in a stronger way. So the evaluation process that we proposed in the conference strategy is to work with the Conference Personnel Resources Committee to do a vision check for how do we most effectively deploy conference staff throughout the conference for this new idea of building the capacity of local churches and districts to do mission and ministry, as well as being a liaison and helping local churches and districts find the resources that they need to do mission and ministry within Holston Conference. And the final item within our conference strategy team is communications. What we've realized, and I think most people realize, is that the way we communicate today is vastly different than the way we communicated, as soon as 10 years ago. And more importantly, the way that we communicate is continuing to change. And the communication staff at Holston Conference have done an excellent job of trying to keep up with the changes. Like every other entity or institution, everyone is trying to catch up and maintain the edge of how we communicate throughout the conference. But what the strategy team realized is that, like other institutions with this challenge, we want to get ahead of the curve. We want to be finding ways that we can use technology and our communication skills to be an evangelism tool, to find new ways to reach people and to engage people in the work of the church. So it's no longer simply a website where you go to find information about what's going on. We are hoping to find leadership outside the conference, within the conference, who are visionary to help us find ways to be innovative and creative, to use the technology that we have now, the technology that most people not presently in church use to interact with each other. And so it's almost a new paradigm shift as to how we communicate through the conference by using new technology and resources available to us. So those are the 7 elements of the comprehensive conference strategy that we're proposing. But there's one more thing, and this is probably the most exciting part of the plan. Because rather than a program of implementation within the conference, what this strategy is a plan for change. And what we've engineered into this strategy plan is a way to make sure that Holston Conference is calibrated and fine-tuned to be responsive and to adapt to the world as it's changing. And so what we've built into the strategy plan is a periodic health check of the conference to make sure that all the 7 elements that we've talked about are continually evaluated. And so what the conference plan proposes is that the year following General Conference, a conference strategy team made up of new people, new leadership, go through these same evaluative tools, use these same evaluative tools, go through the process to make sure that on all of these elements we are still properly tuned to be the most effective in our mission and ministry throughout Holston Conference. So what we're doing through this is embracing change. And so, for example, any of the elements that we've talked about, whether it's redistricting or the way that we deploy resources or staff, are up for reevaluation every 4 years. And so if it's not working the way that we envisioned, we go back and change it. So the the change in perspective on what this conference strategy proposal does is that we're not proposing a change that was going to last 50 years at Holston Conference. We're proposing a change that adapts to the situation that we find right now. And we don't know what the future is going to be. We don't know what it's going to look like in 5 years, but we've got a process by which we can evaluate that and make sure that we are properly aligned with the mission and ministry of the church. And I think that's probably the most exciting part of this plan, is that it ensures that Holston Conference is constantly at the leading edge of our ability to discern what God's will for Holston Conference is, and our ability to adapt, to be agile, to be nimble, and change with the demands that the world has for us as we try to live out our call to ministry in Holston Conference. So please look at the conference strategy team proposal. Will be available to answer questions at Holston Conference. We'll have a chat room during Holston Conference where you can come and provide some input for us. This is an open process, and we invite questions that you might have, because our vision is that we all move together forward into the future that God has for Holston Conference, and we do this together.